Welcome to Vision to Venture. I'm Eddie, and I'm here to uncover the realities of scaling and building a tech startup. Each week, I speak to leaders within the tech space with their insights and advice on how to found, fund, and frame a tech startup. So make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Welcome to another episode of Vision to Venture. Today I'm joined by Jordan Burgess, who is the co-founder of Humanloop. Humanloop help companies build, manage and evaluate prompts for large language model applications. Their aim is to enhance the performance and reliability of AI models across various applications and industries. Hello Jordan, how are you?
Hey, good, thank you.
Thanks for coming down and joining me on Vision to Venture. And so what would you say inspired you to become a founder, particularly in the AI and technology space? Were there any sort of like specific moments or specific experience that sort of influenced your decision in that aspect?
Yeah, for me it was like a latent interest in technology and building things.
Okay.
Combined with a few instances of like situations that sort of encouraged me or pushed me down to the path of being a founder. So if I go back to my teenage years, I spent that mostly skateboarding and building websites primarily.
Fair
and
enough.
I had a little taste of what it was like to sort of sell something on the internet when I was 14. I had a guitar tab website. Sold as a 14-year-old. I couldn't believe someone wanted to buy something I'd built, and that's just like a little bit of inspiration in that direction.
Impressive.
It was really cool. I mean,
But, yeah.
it was, and the other aspect of it is that I went to MIT for my third year of university.
Nice.
And there is just a really special place because everything you're doing there in classes and so on, they're always building something. They are, I mean, it's just a pure technical university as well.
Yeah.
So like the stuff they're building is very cool. And just the inspiration of like that sort of laid out the path of like there is this sort of role in the world of being a tech founder, which I don't think I was that aware of beforehand. So some of my roommates at the time went to Y Combinator, got funding from A16Z. They sort of, and they were all sharing around these like Paul Graham essays and so on.
Okay.
So just like, okay, there's a path here.
Yeah.
There's like this established thing here. It's very inspiring. So as soon as I sort of understood that, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to go and be a founder.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into like the language area of tech?
Not at all. So I would probably paint myself more as like a tech generalist.
Okay.
Back when I finished university, and I sort of was very inspired to go and do my own startup. And so this is probably interesting for you listeners. I went to do EF, one of the first batches of EF.
Okay, nice.
But as a generalist and trying to figure out exactly what I should do. And this is probably one of my learnings on the way, is like I started doing something that wasn't a particularly good idea founder fit. I started working on something in the medical tourism space. The idea to be like, let's be the Airbnb for healthcare.
Okay, nice.
Why can't you fly to India for your heart surgery? Why can't you go to Hungary for your dentistry? Thailand for your sort of plastic surgery?
That's a great idea.
It's an interesting one. Like it is very compelling because there's such arbitrage around the world. But like it's really interesting to double click on why that idea has not succeeded yet. And for me, that was a poor fit because I don't have like a real inherent interest in that space. And one of my learnings as well is like if you're going to be a founder, it's an investment of a decade of your life at least.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
you have to be really careful about you have to care a lot about the problem.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
I had this situation when like those starting conditions weren't wonderful for me. Like I didn't love the space, and it was also a learning was that being a founder is really hard.
Yeah, not that I would know from personal experience.
We were trying to
almost
encourage.
Guarantee it.
We were trying to encourage all the British people at the time to go to Hungary for their dentistry because that was like a starting point we're doing. So we flew out there. We're trying to do Airbnb, take photos of the place. It was quite exciting at the time, but also just real challenges to it. Of like all the dynamics of why someone would operate in this space, why would they go and bother to go and get their dentistry done somewhere else? Like it's quite scary. All these concepts.
But then a lot of people do that though. A lot of people fly to Turkey.
A lot of people Turkey for the hair transplants.
Yeah, and dentistry.
Okay, yeah.
And so, you know, if it's like...
It's growing a little bit.
It is growing, so if they're doing that and they're actually going to these companies directly, why would they not want to just use a service that just points them in the right direction at a time?
I could definitely go into details about this. Like as a concept of like a marketplace, it sort of fails as some of the criteria of what would be a good sort of repeat transactions, things like this. And like it's very trust based. So you have to try and foster trust on the internet for these things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I made the decision back then, so it was my first real startup attempt to go and sort of, I remember if you remember the Bill Gates quote, it's like people underestimate what they can do in 1 year, but overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10.
Right, yeah.
And so taking more of a long-term view on this, I was figuring out what trends are going to be super impactful in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. And I'd read Ray Kurzweil, Singularity is Near. That was very influential. Mm-hmm. I'd done some machine learning courses at university. Yeah. And so just thought, well, I'm going to really invest in getting into this space. So I'm going to go back and study more. I'm going to go sort of work in the industry and then go and figure out exactly how this can be applied.
Yeah, yeah. And then was it at university when you were sort of like getting into the machine learning side of things that you then went into the more language area of machine learning? Or was it further on before you started Humanloop?
It was partly at university. I did a machine learning, speech and language technology.
Okay, nice.
I'd also then went to work on a startup called Bloomsbury AI, which were doing very language based.
Yeah.
Do you remember the company as well?
I recognise the name. So yeah, I know that they're sort of language based.
They got bought by Facebook. They sort of became the core of the AI lab in London.
Yeah.
And then worked at Alexa. So it was actually, I don't think it was a particular conscious choice to go after language. But there's a lot of exciting stuff going on there. Yeah. And I can now, because at the time I would say that AI was actually more exciting in the vision space. But language is so important.
For sure.
It is the universal interface to these machines. Everything now in AI will be language plus all these other sort of modalities.
Well, exactly, and even computer vision needs a bit of NLP, they sort of work together collectively. And I feel like being a recruiter in the space, you definitely see a lot more companies that are in the language area, and especially now that large language models are a thing and obviously ChatGPT has come about, so many companies are looking for people that have got that experience with LLMs and are very sort of like language focused, need LLM experience, and it's all sort of happened within the last sort of year that it's just absolutely exploded on the language side of things, and everyone's looking for that sort of experience. So, I mean, yeah, it's a great space to be in. Yeah. This episode is sponsored by DS Group. DS Group help connect machine learning and software engineering talent with groundbreaking opportunities in the field of AI. So whether you're a company searching for exceptional tech talent or an individual seeking that perfect role, DS Group is your go-to solution. Thanks to DS Group for sponsoring Vision to Venture. And so this question our audience has actually sent in. So this is one from them. And it's just asking to share some insights into the initial stages of developing Humanloop, and what were some of the early hurdles or breakthroughs that shaped the company's direction?
So our initial thesis was we were focused on what are the blockers for AI adoption in the world.
Okay, yeah.
And it was the case that getting good quality annotated data was a big blocker. Why? Because we could see this technology is it's really, really powerful, but why is it not being used by lawyers? Why is it not being used by the healthcare professions? Yeah. So we focused initially on techniques to help people get high quality annotated data very quickly. It's counter positioning to some of these companies that will use sort of offshore labor to just annotate data at pretty low quality. So we started out with this active learning, and my co-founders, Raza and Peter, they have more research in this area in particular, of how can you be very selective in what you label, make it work in the system, to train a model. And that idea was sort of directionally correct, but the technology wasn't the right thing. Because I don't think we fully appreciated, it has to get hammered into you, how much scale matters in AI.
Yeah.
So that's been the sort of trend since the start, but it's been really apparent in the last 3 years with these large language models. They're trained on the internet and more, very, very big, and those almost don't need annotation to work in these industries. If you ask ChatGPT a medical question, it will do pretty well. They're trained on this.
Oh god, yeah. Oh, it's come incredibly far, and I feel like you can do pretty much anything on ChatGPT now. It's kind of mad how much it has shaped the AI world as well, and how a lot of the focus at the moment is surrounding like ChatGPT and that area of machine learning and AI.
So there was a pivot we had to do as a company.
Yeah.
So we were sort of watching these sort of models, like we have GPT-2, GPT-3 coming out.
Yeah, of
and
course, yeah.
That we're very aware of this. And actually, there's an interesting sort of pivot in the company. It was about 2022 in the summer. Then we decided to go all in on large language models, and just because we generally think that is going to be the future. You take these pre-trained language models and adapt them to your use case. That is the trend of the industry. And so we were focused entirely on the tools to support that. And it was an interesting dynamic because back in summer 22, the biggest concern was how big that market was at that time. We generally try to find all the companies that were using GPT-3, and we generally estimate there was probably like 100 companies doing it. There's a few other like demo projects and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
But it was actually surprisingly small, and obviously it's exploded since.
Massively.
Massively. Yeah.
Did you expect that to happen?
Yes, definitely.
So you kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, it's a question of when, as a company, when do you want to sort of do these pivots? When do you basically want to try and catch a wave, and you want to push at the right time?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that was the wave.
Basically, yeah. And another transition where we saw early versions of Claude and GPT-4. And I think this was a moment when AGI, artificial general intelligence, when that became sort of just something that I sort of believed in, but I guess like I didn't really feel, to something that like, oh, we're actually on that timeline, we're going to have AGI, and it felt very surprisingly soon.
Yeah.
So that's been a big transition as well, just to try and readjust for this world where we think AGI is coming soon.
Does it get quite daunting having all of these like new things happening in the sort of language world and things that you can utilize in your business?
It's exciting, and it's has its own set of challenges as well.
Of course.
The space is moving incredibly quickly.
Would you say that you'd maybe class that as a hurdle, being in the space that you're in?
Having to hurdle an opportunity, however you want to frame that. Yeah. So it's just dramatic. Like the techniques that were super important in machine learning 3 years ago are just completely diminished, and the techniques that are even ones that were like a year ago to what's useful now, that's all changing. So as a company, we need to really keep pace with that. But it is also very exciting because you can just see the capabilities of what people can use with these models. It's just extraordinary. Yeah.
It is. I mean, obviously, someone that's not a techie myself, but sort of sits on the outside looking in. It's kind of crazy how far things have come and how much has changed within the space of the last year alone. It's just dramatically changed, and there's so much that has happened. It's just it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And what would you say are the core functionalities or unique features of Humanloop that differentiate it from other tools or solutions in the AI space?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on in the AI space. You have image
course.
generation, speech, like all these different modalities, different tooling sort of applications. We focus entirely on like large language models and this sort of foundation model space. So taking these enormous pre-trained models and adapting them to your use case. And we focus primarily on this prompt management and evaluation step. But over time, we do imagine that this is going to be a sort of control center for all of your AI developments in a company. So I'd say one other differentiator for us is like our internal belief that like actually AI is actually going to be very accessible technology, and that all businesses will ultimately become AI businesses. Like, you will integrate AI into your way of working, into your products, into basically everything. And it's crucial then that you don't just limit this technology to software developers. Or machine learning engineers or data scientists, whatever that little bucket of engineers are called. People that should be able to shape this technology are actually should be the sort of product managers, product owners, and also the end users. They have the best insight into how these systems should behave. So that's a core thesis of like how Humanloop works. Taking in these feedback sources from users, from product managers, making it accessible to all these people, not just the developers.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there's so many different, and that's another thing about the tech world as well, is there's so many different people that make it and build it up. Like you said yourself, obviously you've got the engineers, the scientists, and the product managers. And I feel like where there are so many different people with those different types of skill sets and different roles to play within the space, it's sort of like, I mean, for me anyway, it's difficult, sometimes gets difficult to understand where certain aspects of the tech world go and which sort of which job title and which person those responsibilities will lie with, and where it all sort of falls down to.
Yeah, we see
it's a lot.
There's a lot of emerging roles coming up in the space.
Yeah, that's something I've seen a lot.
So actually, yeah, you might be recruiting for some of these roles. Like at the bigger companies, they're now having chief AI officer or like head of AI product development, like these roles where it's like they really want to invest in this as a core focus of the business, because the smart ones are viewing it as like fundamental and existential if they don't operate here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just changing every day. It changes massively. It's a very fast-paced industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how would you say Humanloop define its role in the AI space, particularly in assisting teams to build, manage, and evaluate prompts for large language model applications?
It's primarily indexing on this ability of like getting the whole team involved in developing that. And it's a learning that we've seen that as companies involve more product managers, they can actually get to deployment and production faster, driven by the rest of the team. Yeah, it's an unnecessary bottleneck that a lot of companies struggle with, where like if Duolingo, if the software engineers that are really great at writing code and hooking up these systems also have to try and engineer these prompts, like to tailor a course content to be a great French tutor or something like that. So it is very collaborative.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely believe so as well. And what would you say from your point of view, what significant changes or trends do you sort of observe in how companies are utilizing AI, but specifically in language-related applications?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So I could probably bring us back. Like there's the world of like data science and so on. Like a lot of companies actually got burnt by that era. Like when we were first pushing this, we were going to lawyers and sort of like saying, hey, obviously you should be using us for your like case research and stuff like that. But they've actually had failed data science projects in the past. Now all the companies are like really trying to They feel this urgency of building AI systems and are really investing it into their roadmaps.
Yeah.
And so all the big companies are sort of spinning up AI teams and little research bodies. And there's lots of different trends, basically. But let me just get into some of them. So there's if you look at the structure of a large language model application, the most basic version of this is you use a sort of ChatGPT type interaction. Just give it a load of things, like a little task thing to do, and it comes and returns something. Yeah. That's great, and that's generally hugely useful. And what we're discovering, or what people have like learned of how to use these systems is like actually if you can give more control to that AI, you can get this to do like far more dramatic things. So one trend is the idea of the AI acting as an agent. You give it a list of actions that they can operate on, connecting data sources, and just give it a task and let it roam sort of somewhat freely and try to figure out how to do this sort of thing. That is an enormous trend that's going to be I don't think it's practically here yet. A lot of companies still struggle with making that work well. But I think over 2024 and beyond, that's going to be a really, very big one, having AI agents operate.
I feel like because obviously there are so many language companies out there as well, but you'd think that there wouldn't be a lot that you could do with the language area of machine learning, but there is so many different companies out there that do so many different things with LLMs and with NLP and just the whole language side of things. Have you come across any sort of other AI companies that are sort of doing something similar to Humanloop? Is it a big area that what you guys are doing, or is it something that you haven't seen much of?
No, it's a definite area. This whole space of large language model ops.
Yeah.
That's a genuine market segment now.
Yeah.
And there are lots of like little vertical solutions that take one piece of that. Like, hey, we might do good evaluations, or some other ones might be like, hey, we're going to do this sort of guardrail system. But there is a lot of benefit of actually having the synergies of like managing the whole system together.
Yeah.
Going from management all the way through to evaluation of like, and seeing how these things are operating sort of in production.
Yeah, absolutely.
These things working together. So it is an emerging space. And one thing I would probably just like, in terms of like language model, I'd probably separate like all the different types of AI companies going on there. There's the sort of like model providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, etc.
Yeah.
Big general models, go for it. Like use for whatever you want. And then there'll be like applications. There'll be like horizontal platforms, tooling layers. That's like Humanloop. And then there'll be like vertical applications. So Harvey AI or something like that. They're taking the big language models. They're making them really good for law work.
Right. Okay. Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, considering the current advancements and challenges in AI, what would you say are some of the potential directions or ideas that Humanloop envisions for the future of large language models and their applications?
Yeah, I can reveal a few things there. But,
to be fair, what you can talk about, what you're allowed to say. Difficult question.
If you're specifically asking about our roadmap, and I've got a tension of like how much should I reveal. But one trend I guess I probably can sort of point out to is that once you've got systems in place to know how well your AI systems are working. So if you set up your evaluators to say, oh, this is like the correct tone, or this is helpful to the user, like achieve their task, whatever those things are, you can set those things up now, especially with AI. You can create a system that knows if it's getting better or worse. And it could also take actions to improve it or potentially improve it. So this is quite a manual task right now, where you have people coming in and changing the prompts, tweaking it, asking it to do stuff, think step by step. I'll give you $200 if you do this. Like, there's a load of these little hacks right now. One thing that we're very excited about is to automate that whole process.
Okay.
So like an automatic prompt engineer.
So it's literally just put the first bit in and away
just
it
say,
goes.
Please just keep experimenting, and you should just be able to see a graph where like performance just goes up to the right.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. And when do you sort of expect this to happen?
It's a very long term. It's a more of a long term play, because there's a lot of pieces that there are steps towards that.
Of course.
Which is still now very manual. So right now you can engineer prompts, evaluate them, see if it's getting better or worse. We can already do things like help you sort of give you guidance on what things to change. But over time, as you can imagine, more of this being somewhat automated.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you, obviously being a founder of a company and obviously going through everything that you've been through, would you say that you could give some advice or guidance to any aspiring founders that are out there listening, and particularly those looking to venture into the AI space or tech space, or even more specifically the language space?
For the AI space, like, it's a very exciting time to be a founder and do something. So like, this is a new technology trend, new revolution. There's huge opportunity everywhere. So I really would broadly advise, like, if you're of that way of inclined, like, this is one of the best times to do something. And also to start fairly soon, because actually, like, these things actually are moving very quickly.
Too quickly.
So you want to stay on top of these things and actually do something. And I would really, I would love to see more vertical applications of this. I think that's where the big opportunity lies. Taking these general models and tailoring them to something that either or like your customer, really focusing on customer segment that can adopt these. So for law, right, they need to make sure that this like can be deployed locally, privately. They need to make sure that it works, that really understands case law and all these other law things, that it can integrate with Word. Like there's so much specialization of these models that really unlocks the value. And so those are the things that I would focus on, because I think there's actually a lot of less interesting stuff going on in people building out little slices of horizontal. I think it's sort of like a low conviction play to kind of build something more general that's applicable. I think if you take a particular slice, it can actually be far more valuable, and you can really tailor it to that product experience for these customers. So that's like specifically for AI advice. For general founding advice, it's a sort of long-term endeavor.
Absolutely.
And
like you say, it's not a decade of your life.
Yeah, and not to and not to compromise.
Okay.
Brutally. Like the starting conditions of a startup are like singular.
Yeah.
And I think I've been fortunate to have a few people that have, when I've felt low conviction myself, to sort of say, like, I would back you, you should do this alone. So I would go and start something on your own rather than with like a compromise over like who you're working with.
Okay, right, I get it,
because that's probably the most important thing. The idea can change, and if you work with good people, it probably should do. But sure. the founding team is very hard to change. So I feel very fortunate that like I just started this with Raza and Peter, just top tier founders. Yeah,
it's a very sort of beneficial thing when you're starting out a company, is actually getting along with the people that you're starting this company with. Yeah. Because I mean, it's like they're the key relationships, and in order to make something work, those relationships need to work. Otherwise, you're just going to be arguing all the time. And I feel like, and that's something that I've had a lot as well, speaking to all these different founders out there and all these different startup founders and etc. That's been one of the most key bits of advice and information that anyone has ever said, and that is like your founding team, because it is so dramatically important. That looking back, is there anything that you wish you had known when you started out as like the journey as a founder, and if so, what would that thing be?
Have sort of conviction in your own ideas, because generally if you compromise on those, like actually what you're building is going to be compromised, and you sort of lose grip of it. So focus on the team and start something on your own if you need to, rather than set yourself up with sort of poorer starting conditions. And the other aspect is like you do genuinely want to work in that space. Potentially for your life. So like this is why I'm just delighted to work in AI, because it's the most transformative technology we're ever going to experience, and being at the frontier of that is just great in every possible way. So make sure you're picking something that you've got longevity in for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And anyone listening out there, there you go, there you have it. Thank you very much for coming today. It's been very interesting hearing about your journey and Humanloop, and I wish you all the best of luck with your future, and to your co-founders as well at Humanloop. Look forward to seeing what you guys do, and just the changes of AI and NLP and large language models.
I think it's only going to get weirder.
It's an exciting time. An exciting time for you guys. Oh yeah, I don't disagree with you. I feel like it's just going to be a very crazy time for 2024 for you guys. But exciting, nevertheless. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining, and yeah, wish you best of luck.
Great.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from leaders in the tech space.